And then I will just go ahead and get started, assuming everyone can see the slides. I'm in academia, so this is why I just make things way too complicated. But yes, welcome to my presentation, Harder, Faster, Better, Stronger, which is in fact named after Interstellar 555, for those of you who are excited about that. And then there's a lot of big words because I am actually in academia, so I can't use normal smaller words. I have to use 5 words plus a colon at best. And so BL adjacent webcomic into a queer normative light novel. What does that mean? Well, let's go for that. First of all, though, big shout out to Leiji Matsumoto. Huge fan of his work, as you will see. I was very sad about his passing a year ago, so just gonna give him a little tribute because, I think in some ways he's definitely one of the big inspirations I had for doing this to start with. What about me? I have many hats, but the hat I will be wearing today is writer-artist, and I think really importantly, I've been on the internet since the 90s. I don't know if we have a bunch of older fellas in the audience, but shout out to you. It's a very different time. And for those of you who are younger, I'm going to talk a little bit about what it means to have been on the internet. I'm not going to go into, there's really good people who have talked about the deep sort of cultural implications. I'm just going to talk about it sort of from my perspective and how that shaped my work. I also grew up on 70s, 80s, and 90s anime. So I grew up on anime that I did not know was anime, and it was definitely...
Sorry to interrupt you. I think your slides aren't advancing.
Oh no. Okay, let me try that again.
Oh, there we go.
Okay, let me do this. We're going to do share screens. All right. All right, so you have to look at my tribute slide if you did not see that. That was very important. All right, everyone get to see Emeraldus, of course, important. All right, onward and upward. Yeah, so I am going to be talking about things that are older than me, and I think you, if you're younger, you should go check out these things too. You're going to see that I'm a fan of things that have nothing to do with BL, and I think that's really important to my BL journey. As you will see in a moment. So we're going to see that I'm going to be coming at it from a slightly different angle, since BL was sort of a thing I discovered long after discovering Slash community, for those of you who know even what Slash is. So yeah, let's hop into that. So Triple Strike is very 90s. It was conceived in the late 90s, and it was basically a comic I worked on and off for essentially 10 years. Because I was I just want to get better as an artist, which is a great thing to want. But as we'll see, sometimes that doesn't lead to the best creative process. It was wacky hijinks comedy adventure with BL adjacent relationships. When you see the media I grew up on, you're going to be oh, okay, I get it. Nowadays, it is a little bit more comedy. It's still comedy adventure, but it's way gayer in the sense that now I'm just okay, everyone's just going to be in canonical relationships instead of me doing subtext constantly. And the plot's cohesive, which is pretty cool, I think. And I don't even think CJ is a friend, but even they have not seen old Triple Strike art. I don't usually share this. And I did a panel for panel because it's a time. So I basically, let's say issue 1 released in 2002. Let's just say this is 20 years later. Yeah, I think I've improved a little bit as an artist. But yeah, that's the cool part about doing art is weirdly you get better as you do art. And actually here's issue 16, one of the last issues. I think there was 18 total. And then of course, I started re-releasing it up through book 3, got caught up to it last year. Okay. So BL adjacent. I don't know if anyone else has ever used that term or had that term, but basically what it means is I grew up on anime. I actually grew up on Unico. That was my favorite cartoon as a kid, anime as a kid. But I didn't realize it was anime. So really the first time I learned what anime back in the day, that was called Japanimation. I know that's incredibly cringe these days, but look, it was the 90s. It was a wild time. And I was into Yu Yu Hakusho and Gundam Wing fandom before I even saw the shows, like many people my age, in fact. So yeah, you're like, oh, this show is like super gay, you say, because you've read the fanfic, and my God, are those boys fucking? But then you go watch the show, and it's like a little different. I learned about BL Yaoi through this fan fiction fan art, and I just want to say that, like, for all that these aren't true BLs, things like Yu Yu Hakusho Gundam Wing, I think it's actually super cool and very empowering that you can just make fictional characters gay. Like, nobody can stop you. And that's also, I think, a common theme I've been seeing at this con is you can do whatever you want to these characters because they're not real, and so it's okay. Like, you're not a bad person, and it's fun, and nobody can stop you. I guess sometimes legislation is trying really hard, but they can't stop your inner thoughts. That's the secret. At the same time, even though I'm like, yes, make the fanfic as wild and kinky as possible, I actually prefer romance sex to be secondary to my main narrative. I really like plot, world building, character relationships that are non-romantic in the narrative. And because of this, I think that the non-canonical implied relationships really appealed to me more than explicit romance sex, which is like what we call Japanese subtext, and we'll come back to that. But yeah, so I think that will again sort of color what you're going to see here. 999, or I should say 666. No, it is 999. What was I thinking? Universe, the other 666. That's for a very different purpose. Trigun, of course. I don't know. This one's going to be weirder. Anyone know Violinist of Hamlin? Okay, so Violinist of Hamlin is so dark and so funny at the same time, the manga, and I think that's great. I love that. I haven't seen the sequel. I haven't read the sequel. I'll have to check it out. But yeah, that was one I was like really into. And okay, Gundam Wing, I'm not showing any of the boys. The boys get all the attention. Weirdest experience of my life. Read all the fanfic, and then I was like, actually, Relina's literally my favorite character, and everyone hated Relina on the internet. And we could have a whole panel just about the hating of female characters in yaoi community, but that's like another discussion for another time. Yes, Relina's the shit. I'm sorry. I love her so much. She's so cool. So we're not going to talk about the 90s misogyny. We can come back to that at some point. But yeah, let's just go on to the fun stuff. Okay, I don't even know. BL adjacent. Okay, is Clamp BL? I don't actually even know. I'm not sure Clamp knows, and I think that's part of the great thing about Clamp is they don't know. They're just doing it. And so, like, I mean, Tokyo Babylon, very strong contender X, absolutely. But then you have like, it's like just the subtext everywhere. So I think it's like both BL and BL adjacent. Gravitation, obviously BL, right? Or Shonen Ai, as it was called in the day. So yes, so some of it was like explicit, some of it was not. Another one I called BL adjacent, Pet Shop of Horrors. Anyone? They're actually, apparently it's getting re-released by 7th season. I'm super excited because I love Pet Shop of Horrors. And I'm very excited. Yami no Matsue, again, I don't know if this is BL or BL adjacent. Yeah, gravitation dojins are definitely very explicit. Yeah, Yami no Matsue, again, I'm like, I think it technically is BL, but I don't really know. And then, of course, finally, my favorite is Sayuki, which is, again, the mangaka does BL. Does explicit same-sex relationships, but also Sayuki is not that, right? So we got it all over the place. It is, oh my God, that is so valid. This is the 90s BL starter pack. And yeah, exactly. Sayuki is definitely BL adjacent. And then again, I was actually not directly. I came sort of through the Slash fandom, so I was shipping things that were not. Metal Gear is Japanese. I didn't like know that at the time. They had English voices. Like it was on a American console. The PlayStation, which clearly came from America. I don't know. But yeah, so these are sort of the fandoms. If anyone knows these. Good Omens, Stargate, Metal Gear Solid, the OG Star Trek. I love Star Trek, TOS. And Buffy the Vampire Slayer. I know. I hope some of you are just like leaving your body as you see this stuff. You're like flashing back to the past. So again, slightly different world than BL. And all of that is to say, in some ways, I'm sort of more on the slash side than the BL side, though I have discovered many BLs that I greatly enjoy. But let's go back to the 90s. Let's talk about 90s tropes that you may or may not love. And this is like the no shade zone, because I think these tropes are like, some of them I'm like glad they're gone, but they're really historical, and I think that's actually really important. Like, we're gonna talk about that in like the Ranma 1/2 remake. I'm like excited, but I'm like, I don't want it to be too woke, to be super honest. Like, I think unfortunately groping and panty shots is like a really essential part of the Ranma experience, but we'll see. Okay, first one, happy fun romps that end in dark tragedy. Man, how many of you just like started a show and you were like, I'm having a great time, and then everyone dies, and you're like, that's so good, so sad, but it really hit. Strong aesthetic sensibilities drive the narrative. That kind of goes with the first one. Like did we have to cut off someone's head and have them cry on the head at the end? Yeah, we sure did, because like it would not be aesthetic. It would not be beautiful. Oh my God, Angel Sanctuary, yes. That is strong aesthetic darkness, yes. Okay, this is the other half. Pervy humor, grouping, panty shots, nosebleeds, all the classic anime tropes where you look back and you're like, haha, that's sexual harassment. Oh, it's a joke. But it is, I don't know, it's just like, it is part of the times for sure. You did not watch anime without having to see a little bit of that. Metaphors for the atom bomb. I won't really get into that, but I do like those. I think we need more metaphors for the atom bomb. Okay, interesting takes on sex politics, gender politics. Yeah, that was a wild time. Like the idea, this is kind of goes back, we're going to see this sort of, I think that goes with pervy humor and some other things, but just the idea of what female roles should be in that time, exploration of transgender in that time. It's just a different time. You kind of just got to take it for what it is, because people were exploring these spaces, but they might not have been doing it particularly well. It just depends. Tsunderes and yanderes abound. Yeah, that's just like, all the classics. We're gonna that's how relationships should be. But that's also the flip side of that, is that these really did have complicated, often messy characters and story. I think someone shouted out Angel Sanctuary, and I was actually thinking about Angel Sanctuary when I wrote that last line. It is not a clean story, but that's what makes it interesting. And more importantly, I think that just kind of I don't know, it's just like really interesting. And I think the lack of worrying about problematic thinking, right? Because nowadays everyone would be like problematic, right? But I think by not having those bounds on you, by not like being worried about being problematic, you could make really, really interesting situations, like really compelling worlds and characters. That said, let's very briefly talk about something else. So I'm not going to talk about problematic culture because I don't want to. I don't like it. My personal, I guess I will talk about it. Basically, thought police. I don't like thought police. ACAB, kill the police inside yourself. You can just think your thoughts, and there's no such thing as good and bad thoughts. So that's my opinion on problematic. Like, as long as you aren't hurting people in real life, it doesn't matter. Yeah, for real. Like, it's just like people like, why are we policing ourselves when we're like all mad about it? But one thing that I do think comes up a lot is something that I think you need to be cognizant in the modern era is queer baiting versus subtext. Because this does come up, I think, in modern media. And I'm going to talk about it doesn't really come up. Oh my God, everyone is LARPing as a Catholic. Okay. Yeah, the queer bait issue, for those of you who, I'm sure many of you are sort of have talked about it and thought about it, but I think it's just really hard to pin down, to be super honest. I think it just feels bad when you feel queer baited. That's sort of the general reason. I'm going to define queer baiting as a deliberate effort to attract a queer audience with the intent of either not delivering on, undermining these queer relationships by the end of the series. So I think there is a level of deliberateness to queer baiting that I think is very different from subtext. So I'm going to call subtext the hinting at compelling queer relationships within a narrative without emphasizing it, resolving it, as it is important but still secondary to the main world. And so Triple Strike was definitely trying to do subtext back in the day. But looking at it from a modern perspective, I'm like, this is going to count as queer baiting, and that's sort of one of the things I was sort of thinking about, because in this modern world, we got the new Tumblr meme. For those of you who know, this is how you can learn about important world events happening, and I do think. I don't know, but I actually don't watch Supernatural, so am I wrong? Like, it seemed like queer baiting just from an outsider looking in on this fandom and being like, "Are y'all guys okay?" But I'm guessing it's queer baiting. Any thoughts in the audience? Actually, does it count? I feel okay. I just want to make sure I didn't like pick on them unfairly. I could also put in Sherlock, right? So that would be the other. I know Sherlock is queer baiting because I watched that shit and I was mad. But yeah, so I think that's the big question. Okay, and I will fight anyone on this. Phoenix Wright is not queer baiting. Phoenix Wright is definitely subtext, and Phoenix Wright is 100% valid and can live its life freely. And so I think, this is the kind of media that I really, really enjoy. Phoenix Wright is an amazing series, both in terms of story and in terms of gameplay. Yeah, Phoenix Wright really did nothing wrong. Even the questionable actions of some of the later games. But yes, it probably was the butts. Okay, so now let's flash back. Is queer baiting a thing in the 90s? And I'm going to say something controversial, and I don't know if anyone will agree or disagree. I actually just don't think there was queer baiting in the 90s because I don't think companies were seeking out queer consumers. Maybe there was like a little bit of it, but like it just wasn't. I don't feel like LGBTQ plus was a big thing that people were trying to milk money out of at that time, so they weren't baiting them. I think some creators slipped in some content, maybe they did it for entirely capitalistic reasons, but I think it was a very different culture from the time. The other thing to remember is that back in the day, you were just like super hungry for even hints of representation. So like if you were seeing anything, you were like, hell yeah. And I, for one, was pretty happy to be in the do-it-yourself space. I loved being in fandom. It felt very underground. It felt very counterculture. It felt like a very interesting community. Now, of course, like all subcultures, you have cultural problems that arise because that's just the nature of any subculture. But I think it was a really good space in some ways to kind of explore these things in a way that was not being presented in mainstream media. But of course, as my personal take, your mileage will, of course, vary. All right, so let's flash forward. Let's get to the actual, what am I going to do with this hot mess of a webcomic that is very 90s influenced and probably doesn't really work in a modern world. A friend, longtime reader of Triple Strike, asked when I would finish it, and I literally just laughed. I'm like, oh my God, I can't look at the original art without like dying a little inside. I had definitely grown up both as a person and as a writer since starting, which was good. Like I just got better. So anything I did with Triple Strike, I was like, well, I don't actually believe in the story I was telling from that time. It was just too chaotic. It was too much 90s nonsense. And I'm like, I don't want to tell that story. So for those of you who are in writing space, this is what we call a trunk story, a story you stick in the trunk and let it, grow and evolve on its own like a fungus. Because that's when I started thinking, well, what did I love about this? What did I love about this thing that I created over 20 years ago? And I still love the characters and their relationship. It's very lighthearted, very banterful, but there is action, drama, and political conflicts. And I just like fun things, and I like dark things. And I don't think these things should be separate media. And today we separate them. Like things are funny or they're dark. They're very rarely both. And this is not super dark. I have darker stories, but you get the idea. And I did like the large ensemble cast. I'd spent a lot of time creating characters, etc. I did like the basic political premise. It's somewhere between Star Trek Captain Harlock and Lupin III. it's a space opera for sure, but it's very different because a lot of the space operas I see are war dramas, dystopias, and it's just sort of a little bit more Star Trekky, where the future, like, there's like regulation in the future, and things are like not perfect, but they kind of function, which is just different. And it's kind of, in this modern world, it's kind of nice to imagine, politics that function. That's kind of a novel thought. And then there's hints of world building that I thought were pretty promising. There's like pretty fun alien species. They're very much Star Trek, Star Wars. You're not going to see a lot of hard sci-fi xenobiology here. That's just definitely not the place for it. But I do think there is some hard sci-fi anthropological considerations that I was able to do because it is, it's not meant to be taken super seriously, but you can still do world building from these things. What did I not like? Well, I didn't like the lack of overt romance. So basically, again, the main characters, Finn and Alan, are the main protagonists, and they are definitely written as romantic in nature. It's very, the BL starter pack, the BL adjacent stuff. It's definitely in that vein where you're just like, my God, they just need to get together. And then it's like, will they, won't they, for literally, I guess, 10,000 issues that I had planned, because when you're young, you plan 10,000 issues. And so it was going to be subtext. It was not meant to be queer baity, but it was just a lot of awkward characterization, especially since, to go into a little detail, Alan, the inspector, is essentially, it has never come out, I don't say this explicitly, he's demisexual. So he's not particularly interested in romance. He starts the series as a virgin. He's been only in one relationship that was essentially a political relationship. And that's like fine that he has no concept of when people are hitting on him. That's like, for those of you who are aspec, that's arrow asexual life is just getting hit on and being like, I guess we're really good friends. But Sven is like, definitely horny and super gay and has been in a lot of relationships, so it sort of was weird that like he wasn't going to pick up on some of these things, or was doing his best to be polite, but also like, man, buddy, we're living together as roommates, and how much do I have to hit on you before you notice? And that can only go on. I think you can only live as roommates without the other person noticing for like, I don't know, a book and a half, a book and 3/4, I guess, according to me. So yeah, they're gonna get together. They get together in book 2. Spoiler. And then a lot of the blatant 90s tropes in terms of relationship and humor. It was like really slapsticky. It was definitely some groping, which I'm now like sort of like, I'm like, man, I've seen so much anime since then, I can't handle it. If you like it, great for you. Totally fine, enjoy it, but I'm just like, nah, I can't do this. This needs to be like a little bit more like realistic in terms of how people behave and how you get, HR called on you when you do that kind of thing. So not bad, but season for all things, time to move on. I want it to be a little bit more classic sci-fi, so not classic as in like great literature, but like just like more of just general sci-fi. And then, of course, incomprehensible plotting and pacing. I think every writer can kind of look at this and hopefully relate to this on some level. It was definitely the greatest weakness of the comic. It's really hard for those of you who do webcomics, like, shout out to you for doing that. It's really hard to give every panel its due when you have so many panels to draw and it takes forever. And you're just like, I just want to get to the cool part, and you kind of rush through the setup. I think it's definitely easier in writing than it is in webcomics. But even in writing, it really can be hard to set that up. So that's kind of where I was like, yeah, I need to fix that. So who ultimately inspired me to start again? Well, it was actually MXTX. I basically do the Netflix, like, does it look gay? Which is, I look through all of Netflix, I'm like, does this look gay? And Untamed passed the does it look gay metric. So I just watched all of Untamed and was like, wait, what? This is coming out of China? Like, is this okay? I thought they had censorship laws. That was my introduction to Don May. And then I basically was like, I'm going to read this shit. This is good. And then I was like, oh my God, the books are so good. MXTX is so funny. She is so funny, and I loved that. She writes mystery. This is the Grandmaster of Dramatic Cultivation, has mystery. It has adventure. It has comedy. It has romance. It has intrigue. It has drama. It has BDSM. Like, it really has it all. And I was like, wow, this is kind of how I want to write. I just want to write a cool story that has some sex in it. So that was definitely where I was like, wait, there is like a world where this is a thing you can do where it's not, is it BL? Sure. Is it like focused on relationships? No. And that's sort of the space where I really wanted to exist in. So then I basically was like, okay, let's take this stuff. Let's keep the comedy, the adventure. Let's keep the oblivious to love, ace lifestyle. Let's make it more queer normative, which I'll talk about that term in a moment. And let's just like kind of keep it more focused on adventure than romance, even though that will be a thing. I saw another writer had this term queer normative and I loved it. Basically, the romance is definitely central to the story. A lot of the story is built around the fact that they just really happen to like each other a lot. But it's not a romance, and actually they have drama around their political situation, but they don't actually have a lot of interpersonal drama. I no more will they, won't they. And I don't think it necessarily would fit into a BL space, despite I think being for BL enjoyers. So it's not, you're not going to be like, is this about them? Yes, but not really. But really, it's a world where queerness is normalized and commonplace. So just their queer characters exist. They do their own thing. It may or may not ever come up. I'm not going to talk about gender. I'm going to only talk about sexuality. But I think gender is definitely a thing that's very important. But basically, we're going to call this a queer normative space. So nobody's going to be homophobic about their relationship. Sven exclusively likes boys and nobody cares. His parents are supportive. They just want him to settle down with somebody nice, like parents, are wont to do. Alan's like, I'm just not really into this. And everyone's like, yeah, but you are from a noble family, so you are going to have to probably have some kids somehow. And that's basically the end of it. So Sven and Alan, main pairing. They are a detective versus a pirate, so that's their initial conflict. I actually think one of the things that is actually really central is not the sexual relationship or sexual orientation. It's actually Alan's biracial heritage. So I don't know if anyone else in the audience is biracial, but this is sort of I feel like the biracial experience is sort of never quite fitting in. And that's actually honestly, I think, more central to the plot than like questions of sexuality. So he is both part human, part Parian, raised on a Parian planet. That's the alien race. Went to Earth, passes as human, never quite feels human. And I just feel like that's it for me. That's the biracial experience in a lot of ways. And I wanted to focus on that again more than sort of the relationship, although I think that does influence relationships. So that's where that sort of went. And then of course, because I like politics and espionage, they're on opposite sides in many ways. It's not like a wartime, but there's undermining. There's like corporate military espionage. So instead of being will they, won't they, it's like yeah, my boss kind of screwed us over. And I also wanted to be like, okay, I like I'm not against romance. So the other pairing is Valtra and Colin. Valtra is the first mate of the ship, and Colin is Alan's detective partner. And they are both very explicitly bisexual / pansexual. I try not to have too many slutty bisexual disasters, but I give myself exactly one-ish, and he takes that role. I know this is like people are like, bisexuals everyone assumes they're promiscuous, and I'm like, yeah, that's horrible, but I'm also like, but man, do I love myself a slutty bisexual disaster. So I allow myself exactly one, so I'm not like stereotyping bisexuals. Exactly, slutty bisexuals, they definitely want rep. That is definitely a thing they enjoy. And also they are poly, and again, this is like a bad BL talk, I guess, but can we talk about the fact that like male-female relationships are totally underrepresented in media? Like bi people are not allowed to be in male-female relationships without it being like, well, now you're straight. I'm like, that's like not how that works at all. So I just think they're neat, but also I just wanted a little bit more rep of these relationships that quote pass. I think passing, that's like a really, that's like a theme that I think happens a lot in across not just gender and sex, but like race, everything else. I also got to play a bit more with the third race, the Majin. They are the space furries. They're the space furry elves. I love them. And they're basically the third species. They'll play an increasingly large role as the series continues. They are agender and they are eusocial. They're a hive-based society, a la bees. That's what eusocial basically means. They had 2 sexes, and I'm like, that's so boring. I'm in an alien world. Let's like give them 5 sexes. So we'll talk about reproduction. Will probably come up at some point, but essentially they're like super advanced. So like they can make things in test tubes. I don't know. Don't worry about it. Well, I actually do know how they reproduce, but because I just like thinking about that. But it's cool. But mostly, again, I wanted a hive mind society that was both technically advanced and peaceable toward other species. I mean, we love the Borg. I love Madness Season. I don't know if anyone else read that sci-fi novel, C.S. Freeman back in the day. But basically, usually hive societies are like super aggressive and want to destroy the world. Oh, Xenomorphs, Alien, right? Alien Romulus just came out. Haven't seen it. I love aliens. But I wanted something a bit different. So they understand free will. They understand independent thought. They think they're superior. They definitely have elf snootiness. Because they're a collective superorganism, and that's clearly the most civilized way to exist in society. But again, that's more of the world building that I wanted to do, rather than sort of focusing on how they biologically have sex with exactly 5 individuals. And again, horrible BL talk. I just wanted non-romantic relationships, right? Like I wanted strong platonic friendships. I definitely don't like it when everyone gets paired off in narratives. Actually, from a completely BL perspective, or at least / community perspective, this definitely sort of like, it's like almost when people pair everyone off, it's like, no, you don't get to ship these people because they're canonically with other people. And it's like, I'm not going to stop. That's not going to stop anyone, creator, first of all. But also, I think it just makes a weaker narrative. We don't have to like all date, our colleagues. We can. That's fine. But we don't have to. So I wanted just more representation of platonic intimacy where people can be really close friends. But yeah, I mean, also, yeah, do I care if fandom explores this pairings and makes like a lot of explicit sex between platonic people? No, I don't care, because it's all made up. Because they're all not real. So you can do whatever you want to them. That's how I feel about all media. So yeah, so that's sort of something I just like in my own writing. And again, I like that people in fandom get to do whatever they want with things, because I think that's really important. So yeah, so that was sort of I'm having fun, I'm building worlds, and then I actually wrote them. Well, I wrote them one at a time. I illustrated them because I just am a masochist. We're going to see the masochism coming out a lot in a moment. And I was like, I don't know, what's next? And it's like, well, the same thing to do would just be put it on the internet and walk away and never bring it up again. But then I was like, oh yeah, okay, I'm going to self-publish. So I did a novel, and then I looked into essentially the self-publishing process. So this is going to be this is the content warning for this. This is as you know, this is an orange talk, so it's not explicit. But the next few slides are entirely business. So like that's your content warning is, oh my god, I'm just going to learn about how to set up like an ISBN, which is horrible. I'm sorry. But I'm going to go over basically how to think about publishing options, how to set up ISBNs. I'm not going to talk about marketing. I know at least some people in here are way better than me at that, and I'm bad at marketing. So you should talk to them about it. And then one day I will profit. I will not profit. It's fine. That's okay. I've accepted this. Yeah, so for anyone who wants to do this, I'm going to go over some things that I did, and I would love, hopefully I'll have some time at the end if you have some questions. So I'm not going to go into traditional publishing route or particularly online platforms, but these are sort of your general options. Traditional publishing does require usually an agent or a small press indie publisher, which I will again not go into. I'm going to talk about self-publishing. Which is neither better nor worse. Self-publishing used to be stigmatized. It's really not anymore. It's all the same in many ways. I've even talked to published authors, and they're like, I kind of want to go self-published because I'm tired of the bullshit that traditional publishers like shove on them. So there's truly no right answer. Self-publishing is Amazon. I went through Amazon, of course. Ingram Spark I'll talk about. Barnes & Noble and Kobo are very similar, so they're just assume they're kind of the same. And then I did publish to have a DRM-free copy on itch because I'm in software actually. So having DRM-free software is like actually kind of like, I guess, ideologically important to me. So hell yeah, itch supporting the free world. Thank you. Now, unfortunately, due to the constraints of capitalism, we cannot all just support the free world. We have to bow down before the big one, Kindle Direct Publishing. This is Amazon. They are big. If you want to have reach, you have to be on KDP, unfortunately. They handle ebooks and on-demand printing. They will provide a KDP-only ISBN for each of these things. I'll talk about ISBNs in a moment. It's simple to set up. You must have a bank account and you must handle taxes. I'm going to skip over these steps, but like you need to do this. If you want to self-publish, you want to set up a separate bank account for safety, and you probably want to think a little bit about how taxation will work and look at how taxation works in your country, because it is very easy for authors to fall into a hole. This is a creative field. People don't want to think about, tax laws, but you have to protect yourself. So just be aware. Okay, you did that. It's horrible. You made it through that process. It's now time to set up the book's metadata. Well, welcome to marketing. You're going to have to go figure out where your book fits in the world and how best to get it to its audience. Definitely take some time with this, setting your tags, setting your categories, etc. Finally, you're going to upload a cover plus manuscript, which I'll talk about the creation process in just a moment. And then you can just hit go and you're like, yeah, I did it. KDP is great because you can resubmit novel versions as many times as you want for free, which is really nice because I discover typos after every single time, no matter how many times I reread it. I do not hire an editor because this is it's like a lot of money when you're like, I'm not going to make much money off of this. But yeah, KDP is definitely the simplest option if you want to do actual publication. Itch, I'll just throw it out there. Itch is definitely the simplest of all, right? It's really easy to do. I have not enrolled in KDP Select, but you will basically get onto Kindle Unlimited, get some money based on how many people read your thing, and you will have a 90-day exclusivity deal with Amazon. I have very mixed feelings of that, so essentially I've never done that. But that is an option if you want to sort of try to get more reach. Okay, this is like a lot of numbers, but we just gotta I don't know. You got to think about this. Like if you're talking money, you just have to think about money. Unfortunately, KDP has two options for ebook royalties. They have 70% royalties, just the standard. Generally, try to do that, and then 35% royalties for customers outside of eligible territories. Depending on where you live, you might not be available for standard royalties. And depending where the customers live, that's the case. But in general, go for a standard if you can. If you want to do physical books, which I wanted to because I just like physical books, I like holding them. I like setting up, things to look nice, like setting images in the correct place, setting up all that stuff. 60% royalties for Amazon only. If you do expanded distribution, i.e. go to libraries and bookstores, it'll be 40% royalties. I went 60% royalties because I just was like, I'm going to publish other places myself. And just as a reminder, the physical books require you to pay for printing costs on top of royalties. So, and this is an important thing for people who haven't published or are not in author space. When you see that number about how much a book is costing, just be aware that the author is seeing a tiny, tiny percentage of that. Authors are not trying to gouge you. It's just like there's an incredible amount of costs before they even see a penny of this. So they have to do the math. Like they have to make some money, or they would actually be in the hole. For this, essentially, it would be like a volunteer service. Ingram Spark, large on-demand printer. This is a friend of mine who's also an author, called them the Walmart of self-publishing, and that is definitely sort of the one. This is like the one to check out. There's some other ones. What I like about them more than say Lulu or Smashwords or some of these other ones is that they have really good printing quality. So their paper is actually quite good, which is important because I have illustrations It does have higher printing costs than Amazon. So you have to make sure if you're going to have a consistent price across platform that you take that into account. You must provide your own ISBNs for ebooks and for printing. So you have to buy ISBNs to do that. And again, I'll talk about that in a moment. I'm only going to talk about the United States because that's all I know, but it'll be something similar whatever your country you're living in. It's simplish to set up. You have to register as a business, so tax info, blah 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 blah. If you've gone through that process once, you're good to go. You do need to provide metadata, upload cover manuscript, and then here's the catch: if you get to upload it once for free, but then you pay for changes after that, which really sucks when you discover one typo and you're like, do I really want to pay $40 to fix a typo? The answer is usually no. Maybe we'll see. Maybe when they start flying off the shelves, then I'll be like, okay, yeah, we'll fix that. I do like how they handle library purchases as well, though. So I go through them for libraries, and I have actually had my books checked out in libraries, which is super cool. Actually, I think that's just as cool as people buying it. Oh my God, Ingram Spark royalties, so confusing. This is way more confusing than KDP. It's really obscure. They don't exactly tell you. Let's just say you'll get less than with KDP. So why bother? Well, I would say if you don't really want to bother, if you're less masochistic, just go KDP only. But you will get a wider distribution. You nominally get access to bookstores. But if you want to do bookstores, then you have to talk about wholesale pricing for physical copies, which is its own deal that I discovered while doing this. So sellers, when you're selling in a store, like if you want to sell to a bookstore, like you want to do a book release, and they're like, sure, we'll do a book release. Here, how many books do you want us to order? They will order them. They will purchase them. And they will buy them at a discounted rate that you set. So you need to say how much discount the bookstore seller is going to get on the book that you are selling, which in often cases 50%. Okay, so do the math again. Your printing costs you pay, you take on the nose. You have to pay royalties to Ingram, and you have to give a discount to the seller. And there's the rough part. You have to allow the seller to return unsold books. You don't have to, but no bookstore will ever take you up on the offer if you don't. So basically, if they buy the books and if they don't sell the books, they return the books. So this can be really bad if you're an author and you get a lot of books returned. You're essentially on the hook financially. So yeah, TLDR, self-published authors see only a fraction of their listed price, and there's like real problems where you can actually kind of be in the hole money-wise. And this is why, just public service announcement, please don't read a book then return it. That's super crappy. It really hurts the authors. If you're going to do that, there's this thing called the library. Please just ask the library for the book, and don't like pirate it either. That doesn't really help anyone either. Use the library. It's literally free. Like you just go to your local library and say, hey, can you get this ebook? And they can do it. That's the power of a library. And authors would vastly prefer you do that than pirate it, return it, do all these tricks. Like, that's fine. Hell, if you like want to give me a review and ask me for a copy, and you're like, I have no money, that would even be something I'd do, right? Like, that's like a thing you can do. So like, just help indie authors out. It's a rough time. Now, there are other distribution options. They're not like better or worse, to be honest. I do have versions on Barnes & Noble and Kobo, ebook versions. Lulu did not have good quality printing, so I didn't go with them. It's kind of all the same, but do read the fine print. Like, you just make sure you know what you're getting into. And I think everyone here probably is sort of aware of this. Corporations are not really your friend. Like, they're not here to help you out. They're not like, oh, I really want to see you succeed. That's why I'm opening up my publishing platform to you. That's not why they're there. So you have to sort of take care of yourself, and you are going to be screwed. Like, that's the reality, is unfortunately how that will work. But you want to minimize how you get screwed. So really be careful with that. And I know it's like a lot of work. So when you're starting out, don't creating things you love. But when you get to the point where you're like, do I want to publish? Really check your options and be careful. Last couple of things, getting into a bookstore still is hard, right? Like, if you're a no-name author, nobody cares. Like, why should we take you? You can sell on consignment. So authors, this is where an author publisher provides physical book copies to the store without the store paying. Only when the book sells does the store pay the author publisher. Seller has basically zero risk on them, and it's very common practice. So basically go talk to your local bookstores about the possibility and just ask if you can sell on consignment. And shout out, I'm in Austin, Texas. Shout out to Reverie Books, who does, in fact, have Triple Strike there on consignment. Thank you. They're super cool. South Austin, queer focused bookstore. And there's a lot, Austin has, there's like many things about living in Texas and Austin that are challenges for sure. But I think we have a really cool book scene, I have to say. Lots of cool people making cool indie bookstores. So yeah. Thank you, Reverie. Yeah, let's keep going. Yeah, you've linked them. Yay. ISBN, International Standard Book Number. You have to have one of these. KDP will handle this for you, but if you want multiple distributors, you will need to get your own. I do not know who does other countries. You will have to go look up that per country. US authors, you can look at Bachers, my identifiers. You do have to buy them. They're not cheap. They're like in the, you pay. I bought a pack of 10 for I think around 250-ish. It's not like, it's just, they're not like ridiculously expensive, but it's definitely going to be like a cost you feel like you have to make that choice. And I bought a pack because it was cheaper than if buying them one by one. They will require some setup. You have to set up one for print and ebook, so 2 essentially if you want both. Probably stick with ebook if you are sort of uncertain. And then also, if you do make a physical copy, well, you have to make a physical copy. Now, one cool thing that most distribution services do is they have cover creators that handle both ebook, digital, and physical books. You don't have to have design art software. I, of course, use Clip Studio because I'm already making artwork, so I need some program. I use Clip Studio, that the perpetual license. You're going to see I basically will pay money for anything that's a perpetual license, and I will not pay money for anything that is a subscription license. That's because I grew up in the 90s. The physical copies do need to consider spine width. So you have to actually know the paper dimensions. You have to pick a size, and you have to know the number of pages. So this is like it's not like a hard process, but it's a tricky process, and you got to be really careful. You basically have to have the book fully finished and then make the final cover. Also, remember to include title and author on the spine name so people can see it when it's in a row. And you have to have the ISBN barcode on the back. So you must have a barcode. You can generate one for free. I would just recommend doing that. Or you can buy them, but why not use it for free? Yeah, and you don't need to print a test copy, but you probably want to. I don't, because I'm like cheap, and I'm just like, I believe in my design abilities. I believe in my margin abilities. Actually, CJ and I back in the day did some comic stuff, comic zines. So I feel like we've had quite a bit of printing experience directly. Yeah, exactly. So we've built up our printing muscles. So I'm confident, but I would say if you've never done any physical printing, definitely do some test copies, because it sucks if you order like 20 of them and you're like, well, these all suck. But yeah, I also, because of this, I do use a formatter. InDesign, I believe, is what CJ was using back in the day on our comics. I do it through Clip Studio because you can handle margin. Actually, Clip is great because it does manga, so it really does handle all of the physical stuff. You can set paper size, etc. But I would use, additionally to that, I would use a proper book formatter for the interior manuscript. You can take your Word document and or your Google Doc and turn it into a PDF, but you need to handle use of margin. Margins need to be correct, and page numbers need to be set correctly, and all this other stuff, and facing needs to be correct. And you're going to need to turn eventually into a PDF for both interior and cover. And I just think it's way too hard to do that raw. So I use Vellum. That's pricey. I did a one-time professional license. For those of you who don't want to pay for that, Atticus is a cheap alternative. I have not used it, but I know people who have. I use Scrivener for writing. Scrivener also has some of this functionality. It's just not quite enough for me to do illustrations built in. It's just not quite robust enough. But I have heard Reedsy is a free editor, so that's like a thing you can literally just do online. And I have not used it, but it is free. So, go check it out. And I think it'll get you most of the way there. Now, does that sound like a lot? Yeah, I think it is a lot. I think self-publishing is definitely a lot. It has serious advantages over traditional publishing these days, but it does mean you have to have some business acumen to set all this up so that you are careful. You have to do your own taxes. I know many people here are freelance, they're already doing their own taxes, but if you have never had to deal with, like in America, Social Security, some of the other contractor tax stuff, you just want to be careful so you don't get a call from the IRS. They won't call you, by the way, so don't answer the phone. If the IRS is on the phone, it's not them, it's a scam. They're going to send you some sort of message. But yeah, the other half is I didn't even get to marketing. Marketing is actually, I think, just as big as this. So on top of all this, you get your book out. Now you have to market. You have to think about advanced reader copies. You have to think about previews. You have to think about social media. And I hate all of that. And I'm very, very introverted. So this is not a thing I like to spend my time doing. But it is something you kind of need to think about. If you put in this much work, it's not cost fallacy. You might as well put in more work, right? So you have to be committed and or a masochist. I think I'm like a little half and half. I like to be a little 50-50 split on that. And that's going to be, again, the self-publishing pipeline. And again, not to I don't want to end on that intimidating note, even though that was the full journey from webcomic all the way to self-publish. Like, we had to go through all these steps to get here. That's why it took 20 plus years. The most important thing, though, before you worry about all that is to actually just work on creative things. I think if you love being creative, you should just work on creative things. They don't even have to be original works. They can be fanfic. They can be fan art. That is just as valid. You do not have to worry about publishing distribution. I think at some point you put all this work in and you're like, I wish somebody would read it. And I think that's sort of where the desire to publish, distribute comes from. But you can start by sharing with friends, growing a community from scratch, etc. And this is actually just true in general. Don't worry about creating a best-selling novel. Don't worry about catering it to anybody else. Just write the thing you want to write. Create something you're passionate about. Then consider if you want to make it broadly appealing and how you will get it to its audience if you do. But make something you care about before you worry about reaching other people. And this was sort of discussed in the authors meetup, but if you're writing explicit kinky stuff, you're probably not going to be on Amazon, just FYI. So this all assumes my work is not, my stuff is sort of PG-13 in terms of sex, maybe R in terms of violence, but it's not super, it's definitely more general appeal. I wanted a younger audience to be accessible. But if you are writing explicit kinky stuff, you're going to have to go other routes. So just be aware. Don't get banned forever from Amazon because you put up something that they consider morally questionable or whatever. I don't agree with it, but you just gotta protect yourself. So yes, are you thinking about dusting off your old works? I saw at least a few people are in the channel, and I think you should just go for it. Just do it. Don't think too hard. Just start, because if you think too hard, it'll be like, whoa, that's so much stuff happening. No, just start. It'll be fun. And I know this is really hard. I definitely went through this process. I actually literally went through each issue and was like, okay, let's kind of update it. Looking back on old works is hard. It's hard to look at that and be like, wow, I was so bad at this thing. But you weren't bad at it. You were learning how to do it. That's the growth mindset you should all foster. You were creating something from the heart. And believe it or not, even the old stuff you created will have value to others. So this is a weird side note, but I wrote this Guilty Gear fan fiction about Venom and Chip back in the day, and I have been for 10 years getting people talking about how cool it is and how much they love Chip Venom because of me. And I'm like, that's absolutely wild. That this story that I wrote basically in college still resonates with people. So yeah, you truly don't know when people are going to care about something you wrote about 20 plus years ago. So don't take your works down, leave them up, let people find them. It's cool. People will be excited. And for real, authenticity and authenticity and passion are way more important than other things. That's what people are looking for. That's why people are sick of Marvel movies, is because they're no longer authentic and they're no longer passionate. So, like, make the stuff that people really want. And when you're doing that, you will find nuggets of things that you like, and then you can start to build from there. So, like, there's no idea that's so outdated it can't be reworked. You can turn that idea into something you still love. And what I discovered reworking it is that I loved way more about Triple Strike than I actually thought I would. So I was still into it even 20 years later. So take that and run. I'll just leave some QR codes if you want to join my Discord, where I will try to post little updates about what I'm working on. You can also check out Triple Strike at the link below. And thank you so much for coming. I really appreciate all of y'all. It has been fun. And I think I have like 3 minutes. So if you have any questions, I will try to answer those. I'm going to open up chat. Keep having trouble with that because of how Discord is set up. Thank you. I'm going back and reading through the comments because I can't really see them as I'm going because of, again, I'm on Mac and that's a problem. I can put you in the brig. I will definitely put up my slides. I will share them with the con, and then I will also be putting them on my Discord for people who want to check them out. Yes, the revival of Trigun was super cool, by the way, going back in comments. Yes, I was very excited. I haven't actually watched the new show, but I sure do love Trigun. My God, that was such a good manga and such a good anime. Thank you so much. Well, it's more that Mac has just problems because their little walled garden controlling my life, and mostly it's because I'm not allowed to look at this Discord. I'm not allowed to look at this Discord on my phone because I have an iOS phone, and it literally it's like slut shaming me. It's like, this is an explicit. You can't look at this. This has porn on it. I'm like, how dare you, Mac? How dare you, iPhone? I can look at whatever I want, whenever I want, even if it's at work. No one can stop me. Yeah, unfortunately, I do, for reasons I won't go into. Mac has some stuff that I'm kind of committed to, but yes, it's a terrible police state world we live in.
Any other questions before we end the panel?
Yeah, if I missed your question, let me know.
Looks like we got some people typing. I'll also say, while folks are typing, that if you liked this talk and you liked GM's work, then like word of mouth is so important. So feel free to share any of the links that were put here. Feel free to share Triple Strike to your friends.
It's true. I hate social media, but I actually do I'm like introverted, but I like talking to people, but like one-on-one. I don't like shouting at the internet. It's weird. Oh, Goodreads is super useful. Yeah, reviews on Goodreads are great. I actually didn't mention the review process. That's more marketing. Reviews on Amazon are also really important. If you get a certain number of reviews on Amazon, you basically get bumped. You get seen more. But the same is true for Goodreads as well. So nominally, you need to be on Goodreads. Again, this is the social media thing I'm really bad at. So I'm sure there are people in the audience way better than me at doing this. But you sort of have to be on Goodreads, review other people's stuff, and then people will kind of see your stuff and review it as well. But yeah, that's that's essentially, reviews are essentially word of mouth. They're essentially one of the most important channels for sort of getting your stuff out there.
Cool. Yeah, thank you so much for doing this panel. It was awesome.
Yes, thanks everyone for joining. I really appreciated it. Y'all are great. I hope you had fun.
Yeah,
Read
excellent.
it. I hope you enjoy it too. If you don't, it's fine. You can tell me. You can be like, your work sucks. And I'll be like, yeah, I hear that. Everyone in the world wants Nicholas to save them. We're like every author is like, Nicholas, please save me. I will light candles for you.
Is that going to be an upcoming character in Nicholas?
We should just make a Nicholas meme where we all pray. We're like, please discover me, save me from myself. Exactly.
Amazing.
The Nicholas.
All right.
Damn. Spoiler.
Ooh, low blow. All right. I think that's a good leaving off point. Yeah. Thank you very much, everyone. And I'm going to end the stage.
Bye-bye.